Now, welcome to part 3 of my story that will, in a way, both carry on the Star Wars sequel trilogy or continue the journey of some of its characters, while also sort of rewriting or undoing the story of the sequels at the same time. Or, as I like to put it, this is a story of how what comes next will change what came before. And if you're new to the story or haven't seen the first couple parts yet, I would highly recommend starting with part 1, and if you enjoy that, working your way back to this one. Otherwise, what's going on right now in the story will make absolutely no sense to you whatsoever, and a link to the playlist can be found in the description below. And so now, without further ado, let's get back to the story. We begin with a very familiar scene from the past, with Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, marching on the Jedi Temple on Coruscant with the 501st at his back, before we're then taken inside to the main part of the temple and see the slaughter of the Jedi Order in progress. But elsewhere in the temple, in some secret underground corridor that perhaps leads out and into the lower levels of the city planet, we see an ancient Jedi Master pushing what can only be described as a floating off-white egg-shaped carrier of some kind, one just large enough to hold a small child perhaps. Soon enough, this ancient Jedi Master comes to a thick durasteel door at the end of this very long corridor. He punches a few buttons into a panel next to the door, and with a creak and a moan, the heavy door very slowly begins to slide open, revealing a dangerous-looking, cloaked and masked humanoid holding a blaster at their side, or someone who is clearly a bounty hunter of some kind. This bounty hunter then looks at the egg-shaped carrier and says in a voice so heavily modulated it's impossible to know if they're male or female, "What am I supposed to do with it?" The ancient Jedi responds, "Keep them protected and take them far, far away from here. Find somewhere safe for them." The bounty hunter looks at the carrier for a long moment thinking, and then says, "For how long will they need protection?" The ancient Jedi lets out a sigh and responds, "It may be quite some time, but eventually a Jedi will come for them." The bounty hunter begins to shake their head and says, "Some time for someone as old as you, Sanoob, is probably way too long for someone like me. Besides, why would you come to me with something like this?" The ancient Jedi Terra Sanoob then responds, "I don't have a whole lot of options at this point, and of those I do have, you're the best one. Because of all these, less than reputable individuals I've dealt with in my time, you're one of the few good ones, even if you don't want to admit it to yourself. Plus, you'll find a very, very generous amount has already been deposited into the usual account for you, and I know you always keep your word. I know you always see a job through." The bounty hunter thinks quietly for a moment, then grumbles something to themselves and says, "Fine, I'll find somewhere safe for them, but that's it. Then they're on their own." That's when we can hear noises coming up the corridor from behind the Jedi, the shouts of clone troopers, most likely. Terrace Noob nods as if that arrangement works or will have to work, then pushes the carrier forward a bit where it's then taken by the bounty hunter, and then he again punches at the panel and the door begins to slide shut. As the shouts from down the corridor grow even louder, the ancient Jedi takes hold of his lightsaber, ignites it, and turns to face the incoming troopers of the 501st. But they are not alone, for leading them is none other than Darth Vader himself. Terrace Noob then says to him, "Of course it would be you. Of course it would be the chosen one. Bring balance to the Force." Vader ignores that and instead says, "There was one among the younglings missing, Master Sanoob." The ancient Jedi shuts his eyes as if he knows what that means, what fate has befallen the other younglings. Vader continues, "My new master has commanded all Jedi are to be executed for treason, save one. So what have you done with him?" But as Vader is saying that, he's already looking beyond the ancient Jedi to the door behind him as if Vader knows exactly where the child has gone, and all of this is a mere formality. "You and your master will never find him, and with him goes the hope for the future of the Jedi Order, the far, far future of it, when the Sith are finally no more," Terrace Noob says, standing up as tall and as defiantly as he possibly can. But Vader shakes his head and says, "Even if one does escape us, there will be no one left to train him." But Terrace Noob shuts his eyes and a peaceful smile comes to his face as if he somehow sees or knows otherwise. Angered by this, Vader ignites his saber and attacks the ancient Jedi Master. That's when we're taken elsewhere in time and space, to where we left off last time, to a small troop transport on a strange planet where Mara Jade holds Finn at the end of a lightsaber and has warned him that he's going to answer her questions or else. And so the first thing we hear her ask is, "Why are you really here?" Finn shakes his head. I told you, I don't even know where here is." Mara inches the saber closer to Finn and says, "Then how did you get here?" Finn thinks on that for a moment and says, I'm not sure you'd believe me." Mara inches the saber even closer and says, "Try me." Finn glances down at the saber, then up at her and is about to speak when she cuts him off and says, "And please, don't lie. I really don't want to have to kill you." She sighs and adds rather reluctantly, "You did save my life after all." Finn nods and then again looks at the saber, then up at her, and kind of makes a gesture as if saying, "It'd be easier to talk without this pointed at me." Mara hesitates briefly, then deactivates the saber before reaching out with the Force to pull the other saber, Leia's saber, from Finn's belt and to her. After she hangs it from her belt, she takes a seat. Her free hand, the one not holding the unignited Skywalker saber, goes to the wound on her side as she once again winces in pain. She then gives Finn a look, telling him it's time to tell his story. Finn then begins, "This is going to sound crazy, but I think I'm in the past. Or should I say I'm from your future?" Mara stares blankly at him, and so Finn holds up his hands in a surrendering manner and says, I know, it's crazy, but I just met my best friend's father, or my former best friend's father, and he's younger than my friend is, but he's supposed to be dead too, just like Luke Skywalker, who everyone keeps talking about, is supposed to be dead as well." Mara makes a bit of an inquisitive face and says, "Luke Skywalker dies? How exactly?" Finn quickly responds, "Not by your hand, that's for sure. I've never even heard of you, so I wonder if maybe you were supposed to die here at this time." Mara glares at him and repeats, "Supposed to die?" Finn quickly says back, "Or not. Maybe you were supposed to live and you didn't, which is part of the problem, part of what I'm supposed to fix. It could be why I'm here of all places." Mara looks confused, but that confusion quickly becomes a look of impatience and her grip on the lightsaber tightens. Finn then says, "Look, you don't believe me. I wouldn't believe me. But in the future, your master, Palpatine, he comes back and everything gets really bad. I mean really bad. Worse than the days of the Empire. So bad that eventually it all ends because of him. Or it will, or so I was told." Mara then asks, "Told by who exactly?" Finn hesitates, so Mara makes like she's going to get up, and Finn quickly responds, "Her name was Ahsoka Tano. She found me after I realized something was wrong with Rey, that she wasn't Rey anymore, that she was Palpatine, that he tricked us all yet again. Ahsoka then gave me some training and told me I had to find Ezra Bridger, or that I had to help him find me by finding that lightsaber you have right now, that it can act like a beacon somehow." Mara looks at the saber in hand and asks, "This saber, who did it belong to?" Finnegan hesitates, but then says, "Luke Skywalker, that's his old saber." Mara then looks at the saber again, this time with something like loathing on her face. She then looks at Finn again and starts to shake her head as she says, "I was almost starting to believe you until you said the name Ezra Bridger. He is long since dead." Finn quickly says back, No, that can't be. I just saw him in the future. He can't be dead at this point in time." But Mara just as quickly says back, "And yet I've been assured by the one he once disappeared with that he is dead." Finn looks confused and asks, "By who exactly?" Mara smiles and says, "By the one who is rebuilding the Empire, by Grand Admiral Thrawn himself." That name seems to ring a bell with Finn, and he looks as if he's trying to jog his memory as he says, Thrawn, I know that name from somewhere." It then seems to dawn on him, and he says, He was the one who first organized the remnants of the Empire. He almost led them to victory over the New Republic, if not for being betrayed and killed by Brendel Hux, that is, who then took command and turned them into the First Order." Mara then spits and responds, "Hux, that snake. It sounds exactly like something he would do." It looks like she's going to say more when a communicator on her wrist begins to beep. She then hits a button and says, "What is it?" A voice on the other end responds, "Mistress Jade, New Republic forces have been neutralized, and we believe we've discovered the location of the child in a small village. It doesn't look like much. Shall we proceed?" Mara quickly snaps back, "No, I've told you before that child or not, they shouldn't be taken lightly. Now send me your coordinates and await my arrival. She then hits the button on the communicator again before she even gets a response. Finn then says, "So you really are here for a child?" Mara gives a nod and says, "One that my master has been hunting since the fall of the Jedi." Finn looks perplexed and says, "Since the fall of the Jedi, how could they still be a child?" Mara only says, "This is no ordinary child." Mara's wrist communicator beeps again and she glances down at a set of coordinates before getting up and once again wincing in pain and holding her side as she does, before moving up front and taking a seat at the transport controls. She then glances back at Finn, then at the seat next to her and says, "Care to keep me entertained? I'd love to hear more about this First Order." "Do I have a choice?" Finn asks back. Mara nods and says, "Yeah, you do. I could kill you if you'd like." Finn frowns and takes a seat next to her. Next thing we know, we're watching as, in the early morning hours, the small transport is rolling up on a squad of a dozen or so stormtroopers. After Mara and Finn get out, the stormtrooper who is clearly the commander asks who he is, referring to Finn, but Mara simply says back, "No one that you need to worry about." Mara then asks the situation, and the commander says there seems to be no activity. They don't seem to be aware of their presence. Mara then asks back, "Doesn't seem to be or isn't. Which one is it, Commander?" The commander then firmly says, "They're not. Besides, it looks like little more than a rundown village in the middle of a nowhere planet." But Mara says back, giving him a stern look, "And yet for some reason a great prize of our glorious fallen emperor is in this village. In other words, Commander, be ready for anything." The commander nods once as Mara turns towards Finn and says, "You're coming with us." But Finn shakes his head, which is when Mara takes a couple steps towards him, a lightsaber in hand but not ignited, and says, "The other option is again for me to just kill you, so please do decide." Finn's head immediately starts bobbing yes, as he says he'd love to take a tour of the village. We're then watching as Mara, Finn, and the dozen or so stormtroopers are stealthily making their way through a village of maybe some 15 or so small, dirty, run-down-looking buildings that currently show no signs of life whatsoever, though it still is the early morning hours. After winding their way through the streets a bit, Mara silently points to what looks to be the largest and most well-kept building in the village, and the troopers quickly begin to make for it. But as soon as they do, a warning look crosses Mara's face, as if she suddenly senses something, so she barks out for them to fall back and find cover, but it's too late. From numerous different hiding spots around the village, what looks to be pirates of some kind of all different species emerge and shower the exposed troopers with blaster fire. Half of them are hit and fall before they even realize what's happening, while the other half make for whatever cover they can find and are instantly pinned down. Mara immediately ignites both sabers that she has, both Luke and Leia's, and makes for the first pirate she sees atop the closest little hut to them. Easily blocking the blaster bolts fired at her, she leaps upon the roof and then slices the pirate in two. She then easily leaps to the next closest roof where there are two more pirates and blocks their bolts as she soars through the air. When she lands, she instantly cuts down one of them, but holds both sabers at the throat of the other, who happens to be a Weequay, and then demands to know where is the child. The pirate only laughs and says in Huttese, which apparently Mara understands, "He's already far away from here." With an angry cry then, Mara slashes with her sabers and removes the Weequay's head. She then looks up and her eyes locate and lock on the next nearest pirate, who is running across the open ground and in her direction, firing up at her with a long blaster rifle. Mara jumps down, slashes the end of the rifle off, and then cuts down the pirate, before then looking for and locking on to her next target. At this point, the stormtroopers left, emboldened by her actions, begin to emerge from cover and press the attack, and soon every last pirate is killed, and most of them are killed by Mara Jade. Sometime later, standing in the middle of the village where several of these small buildings have since been set ablaze, is Mara Jade, breathing rather heavily and holding her wounded side and doing all she can to grin and bear the immense pain. The stormtrooper commander then approaches her and says, "We've searched everywhere. There's no sign of the child." Mara then says, "He was here. I can feel it." The commander then asks, "Should we try to pursue?" But Mara shakes her head. "The pirate wasn't lying. He's long gone. Our search will have to start anew." She then turns and walks towards Finn, who's standing nearby looking as if he's trying to blend in and be forgotten. To him, she says, Grogu. Does the name Grogu mean anything to you from wherever you come from? Finn's face lights up a bit and he responds, "You mean in the future, so you believe me?" Mara says to that, "I believe that through the Force almost anything is possible, but traversing time, that should destroy the fabric of reality, of the Force itself. However, I also don't feel like you're lying to me, and so I ask again, does the name Grogu mean anything to you? Have you heard of it from where you come from?" Finn thinks and then shakes his head and says, "I've never heard it before, just like I've never heard of you either." She gives him a fierce look, but Finn only gives a bit of a shrug as if to say, "Sorry, but that's the truth." Finn then says to her, "I'm guessing Ezra sent me to this time and place for a very good reason, to change whatever used to happen here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you used to die and your men stormed the village during the night instead of having to wait for you. And then they took the pirates by surprise and captured the child." Mara takes an aggressive step towards Finn and says in a lowered voice, as if she doesn't want the troopers around her to hear, "Are you saying this mission would have been successful if I had died? That my Emperor's prize would have been captured if not for me?" It looks like Finn doesn't want to say it, but he eventually nods and says, "That might be the case." Mara takes hold of and ignites one of the sabers and holds it out to Finn's throat. "I should kill you," she says to him. Finn replies, "For what? Saving your life?" Mara shouts back, "Saving my life has potentially ruined my Emperor's plans." Finn shakes his head. "And what, you'd rather die than see the plans of your dead Emperor fail? Did you forget what I told you about what happens if your master succeeds and comes back? That everything eventually ends? You're honestly upset that that was potentially stopped?" Mara doesn't seem to know what to say, and so Finn continues, "Maybe there's a reason I was supposed to save you, a good reason beyond just stopping whatever happened here." To that, Mara begins to laugh before saying, "I exist only to serve my master, to carry out his final commands, to find the child and to end Luke Skywalker." But Finn snaps back, "Yeah, maybe it's time to find your own reason to live already? Time to stop serving a dead master who will only be responsible for destroying everything if you happen to succeed?" Without another word, a frustrated-looking Finn turns and just starts to walk away. Mara then looks around and sees that her remaining troopers have obviously taken interest in their conversation and are exchanging looks as if quietly asking each other what they should do. Finally, the commander raises his blaster and points it at the back of Finn, who is still walking away. Mara then says, "Just let him go." But the trooper responds, "I'm sorry, Mistress Jade, but I cannot do that. I've already informed the Grand Admiral about what transpired here, and he said I was to kill the prisoner." Mara, looking absolutely irate, says, "You did what? You went behind my back?" But the trooper gives a little shake of the head and replies, "I'm just doing as instructed, as commanded." Mara says back, "Thrawn's not even here. He doesn't entirely understand the situation." The trooper gives a bit of a shrug and says, "Orders are orders. A command is a command." And then he proceeds to fire. And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this part of the story and what you think might happen next. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.